In the most explosive courtroom moment in Judge Judy's 25-year career, an entitled neighbor known as Fat Karen made a claim so outrageous, so completely insane, that it left the entire courtroom in stunned silence. She accused her innocent elderly neighbor's house cat of running a sophisticated surveillance operation against her. But what Karen didn't know was that her own evidence would expose a secret so embarrassing, so humiliating, that Judge Judy's final verdict would become the most savage takedown in television history. This moment went viral within hours, and what you're about to witness will restore your faith that justice still exists in America. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The courtroom was packed that Tuesday morning. Camera crews positioned themselves for what they thought would be another routine neighbor dispute. The audience settled into their seats expecting the usual drama. But none of them, not even the seasoned court staff who had seen everything, were prepared for the sheer insanity that was about to unfold. Judge Judy herself would later say this case broke every record for the most ridiculous claim she'd ever heard. And the secret Karen was trying to hide? It was captured on her own security cameras. Karen Mitchell stormed into that courtroom with the confidence of someone who believed she was about to expose the crime of the century. Her folder bulged with what she called irrefutable proof. Her eyes blazed with the righteous fury of a woman convinced she was the victim of an elaborate neighborhood conspiracy. She had no idea that within the next 20 minutes, she would become the laughingstock of the internet and face the most humiliating defeat of her life. The elderly woman sitting across from her, Mrs. Sarah Chen, clutched her purse nervously, wondering how a simple house cat could cause such chaos. But here's what makes this story absolutely incredible. Karen's own evidence, the very proof she was so confident would vindicate her, contained footage that revealed exactly why she was really angry about that cat. And when Judge Judy saw it, when she realized what Karen had been trying to hide all along, her response was so brutal, so perfectly delivered, that the courtroom erupted into chaos. The secret wasn't about spying at all. It was about something far more embarrassing that Karen desperately hoped would never come to light. The tension in that room was electric. You could feel it crackling through the air as Karen prepared to present her case. Mrs. Chen sat quietly, still confused about why loving her cat had somehow made her a defendant. Judge Judy leaned forward, her famous sharp gaze already detecting something wasn't right. The audience held their breath. And somewhere in Karen's folder of evidence lay the smoking gun that would destroy her case and expose a truth so mortifying that it would haunt her forever. What happened next changed everything. Not just for Karen, not just for Mrs. Chen, but for everyone who witnessed it. This wasn't just about a cat anymore. This was about entitlement meeting reality in the most spectacular way possible. This was about a woman so consumed with her own delusions that she walked straight into the most devastating verbal destruction Judge Judy had ever delivered. And the best part? Karen did it to herself. Before we dive into this unbelievable courtroom massacre, smash that like button if you love seeing entitled people get exactly what they deserve. And subscribe for more jaw-dropping Judge Judy moments that'll make your entire day. Trust me, you're going to want to share this one with everyone you know. The stage was set for what would become the most talked-about courtroom showdown in television history. Judge Judy's courtroom had seen plenty of entitled people over the years, but nothing quite like what was about to unfold. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting dramatic shadows across the room as two neighbors prepared to battle over what might be the most ridiculous lawsuit ever filed in American courts. On the left side of the courtroom sat Karen Mitchell, a 45-year-old woman whose very presence seemed to suck the patience out of everyone around her. Her bleached blonde hair was pulled back in what could only be described as a militant bun, and her face wore the permanent scowl of someone who had made complaining her full-time profession. She clutched a thick manila folder against her chest like it contained state secrets, her knuckles white with the intensity of her grip. Her outfit screamed middle management authority, complete with shoulder pads that hadn't been fashionable since the 1980s. This was a woman who had clearly appointed herself the unofficial sheriff of Maple Street, and she was convinced she had uncovered the crime of the century. Karen's eyes darted nervously around the courtroom, but her jaw was set with the determination of someone who believed she was about to expose a conspiracy that reached to the very heart of her suburban neighborhood. She had been preparing for this moment for months, documenting what she called evidence with the obsessive dedication of a private investigator. Her neighbors had learned to cross the street when they saw her coming, and the local HOA had stopped returning her calls after complaint number 47 about various infractions she'd observed from her bedroom window. Across the aisle sat Mrs. Sarah Chen, a 72-year-old retired librarian whose gentle demeanor was as calming as Karen's was agitating. Her silver hair was neatly styled, and she wore a simple navy cardigan that spoke of quiet dignity and decades of dealing with difficult people with grace. Her weathered hands rested peacefully in her lap, occasionally trembling slightly with the nervousness of someone who had never been in a courtroom before. Mrs. Chen's eyes held the confused sadness of a woman who couldn't understand how loving her pet had somehow landed her in legal trouble. She had lived on Maple Street for over 20 years, quietly tending her small garden and caring for Whiskers, her beloved orange tabby cat who had been her companion since her husband passed away 5 years ago. Mrs. Chen was the kind of neighbor everyone wished they had, the one who brought cookies to new residents and never complained when kids' soccer balls ended up in her yard. She had tried repeatedly to resolve whatever issue Karen had, even offering to build a higher fence. But nothing seemed to satisfy her increasingly erratic neighbor. Between them, like a force of nature preparing to unleash fury, sat Judge Judy herself. At 81 years old, Judge Judith Scheindlin had perfected the art of cutting through nonsense with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Her dark hair was styled in its signature no-nonsense cut, and her black robe seemed to absorb the light, making her appear like an avenging angel of common sense. Her sharp eyes missed nothing as they surveyed the two women before her, already sensing that this case was going to be something special. Judge Judy had built her reputation on dismantling the cases of people who tried to waste her time with frivolous lawsuits, and something about Karen's aggressive posture and Mrs. Chen's bewildered innocence told her this was going to be one for the ages. Her pen tapped rhythmically against her desk, a warning sign that anyone familiar with her show would recognize as the calm before the storm. She had already reviewed the basic facts of the case, but nothing could have prepared her for the absolute insanity that was about to unfold. The courtroom audience was packed tighter than usual, word having somehow leaked that this case involved accusations so bizarre that even the court staff were curious to see how it would play out. Reporters had positioned themselves strategically, sensing that whatever was about to happen might just break the internet. The air hummed with anticipation as everyone waited for Judge Judy to call the court to order. In the defendant's corner, Mrs. Chen's court-appointed advisor whispered reassurances, though privately he was baffled by a case involving alleged feline surveillance. Meanwhile, Karen's lawyer looked like he was already regretting taking this case, his expression somewhere between embarrassed and terrified of what his client might say once she got in front of the microphone. The moment was electric with possibility. Two neighbors, one ridiculous accusation, and the most no-nonsense judge on television. What could possibly go wrong? Everything was about to change, and Karen had no idea that her carefully planned legal victory was actually going to become her most public humiliation. The moment Judge Judy called the court to order, Karen Mitchell shot up from her seat like a rocket fueled by pure indignation, her folder clutched against her chest. She marched to the podium with the confidence of someone who believed she was about to expose the scandal of the century. The courtroom fell into expectant silence. Cameras zoomed in and everyone leaned forward to hear what could possibly justify dragging an elderly woman to court over her house cat. What came out of Karen's mouth next was so spectacularly insane that it would be replayed millions of times across the internet. "Your Honor," Karen began, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion, "I stand before you today as a victim of the most diabolical invasion of privacy imaginable. My neighbor has turned her innocent-looking cat into a sophisticated surveillance weapon designed to destroy my peace of mind and violate my constitutional rights." The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Judy's famous eyebrows shot up like twin rockets. Mrs. Chen's mouth fell open in complete bewilderment. Even the bailiff did a double take. Karen opened her folder with theatrical flourish, pulling out what she dramatically called Exhibit A. "This orange tabby cat, which goes by the code name Whiskers, has been conducting systematic reconnaissance missions against my property for over 4 months. Every single day at exactly 2:15 p.m., it positions itself at Strategic Surveillance Point Alpha, which most people incorrectly call my fence." She held up a blurry photograph of an orange cat sitting peacefully in a sunny spot. "Notice the calculating stare, the alert posture, the deliberate positioning for maximum visual access to my backyard activities." The audience began to shift uncomfortably, some covering their mouths to hide growing smiles. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her expression morphing from curiosity to barely contained disbelief. Karen, completely oblivious to the room's reaction, pressed on with increasing fervor. "But that's not all, Your Honor. I have documented evidence of coordinated intelligence sharing between this primary operative and other neighborhood cats. They conduct what can only be described as briefing sessions near the community garbage bins every Tuesday and Friday evening." Mrs. Chen finally found her voice, speaking with the gentle bewilderment of someone who had stumbled into an alternate reality. "Your Honor, Whiskers is just a normal house cat. He likes to sit in the warm afternoon sun by the fence. That's what all cats do. Karen spun around, pointing an accusatory finger like she had just caught a master criminal in a lie. Aha! She admits the operative has a cover story. And notice how she calls it normal behavior. Classic misdirection tactics. Judge Judy's jaw tightened as Karen pulled out more papers, her excitement building to a fever pitch. I have also documented suspicious behavioral patterns suggesting advanced training. This cat responds to hand signals from the defendant, maintains unusual alertness during my outdoor activities, and I swear it's been photographing me with its eyes. The courtroom erupted in barely suppressed laughter. Judge Judy's famous glare was now locked onto Karen like a laser beam, and everyone could sense that something explosive was about to happen. What happened next will go down in courtroom history as the most spectacular self-destruction ever captured on television. Karen, riding high on her own delusions of legal brilliance, reached into her folder and pulled out what she proudly announced as her smoking gun evidence. The confidence radiating from her face was about to be shattered in the most humiliating way possible, and she had absolutely no idea what was coming. Your Honor, Karen declared with the smugness of someone who believed she had just won the lottery, I present to you irrefutable photographic evidence of this surveillance operation. She triumphantly held up a stack of printed photographs, each one more pathetic than the last. The first photo showed Whiskers lying peacefully in a patch of sunlight, his eyes half closed in what any reasonable person would recognize as pure contentment. Notice the predatory stance and the calculated positioning for maximum intelligence gathering, Karen announced, completely serious. Judge Judy took the photographs with the expression of someone examining evidence of alien abduction. Her eyes narrowed as she flipped through image after image of a completely normal house cat, doing completely normal cat things. Whiskers sleeping on a warm rock. Whiskers stretching in the morning sun. Whiskers grooming himself with the dedication that only cats possess. Each photograph was more innocent than the last, and with each one Judge Judy's famous incredulous stare intensified. But Karen wasn't finished with her evidence presentation. She pulled out a hand-drawn map that looked like it had been created by a conspiracy theorist having a mental breakdown. Red arrows pointed everywhere. Circles marked surveillance zones, and dotted lines showed what Karen called patrol routes. This tactical map reveals the full scope of the operation, she announced proudly. As you can see, the cat has established multiple observation points for comprehensive coverage of my property. The map was so absurd that even Mrs. Chen, despite her confusion and stress, couldn't suppress a small smile. Then came the piece de resistance that would seal Karen's fate forever. With the flourish of someone revealing a masterpiece, Karen produced a printed email she had sent to the Homeowners Association. Judge Judy read it aloud, her voice dripping with disbelief. I am writing to demand immediate action regarding the implementation of anti-feline surveillance countermeasures in our neighborhood. The threat level has escalated beyond acceptable parameters. The courtroom erupted in barely controlled laughter. Mrs. Chen, speaking with the patience of someone who had clearly dealt with difficult patrons during her librarian days, gently explained, Your Honor, Whiskers is 14 years old. He can barely make it up the stairs to his food bowl. The only thing he surveys is where the warmest spot of sunlight is going to be each afternoon. Her words carried the weight of simple truth that made Karen's elaborate conspiracy theories sound even more ridiculous. Judge Judy set down the evidence with the careful precision of someone handling radioactive material. Her expression was a masterpiece of controlled fury, and everyone in the courtroom could feel the storm that was about to break. Karen stood there beaming with pride, having absolutely no clue that she had just handed Judge Judy the ammunition for the most devastating verbal destruction in television history. What happened next will be remembered as the most savage judicial takedown in the history of television. Judge Judy slowly placed Karen's ridiculous evidence on her desk, her movements deliberate and controlled like a predator preparing to strike. The silence in the courtroom was deafening as everyone held their breath, sensing that they were about to witness something legendary. Judge Judy's eyes locked onto Karen with laser-like intensity, and when she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of 25 years of dealing with the most ridiculous people on earth. Ma'am, Judge Judy began, her tone deceptively calm, in my quarter century on this bench, I have heard some truly spectacular nonsense. I have listened to people blame their neighbors for everything from alien abductions to government mind control. But this, she gestured toward Karen's evidence with barely contained disgust. This might be the most idiotic waste of this court's time I have ever encountered in my entire career. Karen's confident smile began to falter as Judge Judy's voice started to rise like a gathering storm. You are standing in my courtroom under oath, telling me with a straight face that a 14-year-old house cat is conducting military-style surveillance operations on your backyard barbecues? The audience was frozen, afraid to even breathe as Judge Judy's legendary fury began to build. Are you completely out of your mind, or do you just think everyone else is? The courtroom erupted as Judge Judy's voice thundered through the room like the wrath of an angry god. Karen's face went white as paper, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Mrs. Chen sat in stunned amazement, having never seen anyone defend her so fiercely. The audience was on the edge of their seats, phones out, capturing every second of this historic moment. But Judge Judy was just getting started. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing with the fury of someone whose intelligence had been personally insulted. This poor woman, she pointed toward Mrs. Chen, this elderly lady who probably bakes cookies for the neighborhood children, is sitting here accused of running some kind of feline CIA operation because her cat likes to nap in the sunshine. Her voice cracked like a whip. Do you hear yourself? Do you understand how completely insane you sound right now? Karen tried to speak, her voice barely a whisper. But, Your Honor, the evidence clearly shows... Judge Judy cut her off with the force of a hurricane. Evidence? You call blurry pictures of a sleeping cat evidence? You call a crayon drawing that looks like it was made by a 5-year-old having a tantrum evidence? The crowd gasped as Judge Judy's voice reached levels that shook the courtroom walls. Lady, that cat is doing what every cat in America does every single day. It sits in the sun, it sleeps, it minds its own business. The only surveillance operation happening here is you spying on your neighbors and inventing conspiracy theories because you apparently have nothing better to do with your pathetic life. The audience exploded into applause and cheers, some people jumping to their feet. Karen stood frozen, finally realizing that her brilliant legal strategy had just become her complete and total humiliation. Judge Judy wasn't finished, and what she said next would become the most quoted line in courtroom television history. Judge Judy straightened in her chair, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade forged in righteous fury. The courtroom held its collective breath as she prepared to deliver what would become the most savage verdict in television history. Her eyes never left Karen's increasingly pale face as she spoke the words that would destroy Karen's delusions forever. Not only are you not getting 1 penny from Mrs. Chen, Judge Judy announced with surgical precision, but you are going to pay her legal fees, court costs, and damages for wasting everyone's time with this absolute lunacy. That's $3,000. Karen's jaw dropped so fast it nearly hit the floor. The courtroom exploded into thunderous applause and cheers that shook the very foundations of the building. But Judge Judy wasn't finished delivering Karen's humiliation. She leaned forward with the smile of someone about to deliver the killing blow. And furthermore, I'm ordering you to write a formal handwritten apology letter to Mrs. Chen for this harassment. But here's the part that's going to make internet history. You're also going to write an apology letter to Whiskers the cat for falsely accusing him of espionage. The audience erupted into pure chaos. People were crying with laughter, jumping up and down and recording every second on their phones. Karen stood frozen like a statue, her brain unable to process that she was being ordered to apologize to a cat. Mrs. Chen covered her mouth in shock, tears of relief streaming down her face as justice was finally served. Judge Judy delivered her final devastating blow with the precision of a master executioner. Ma'am, the only surveillance happening in your neighborhood is you watching everyone else through your windows like some deranged neighborhood spy. Get a hobby, get a life, and leave this poor woman and her cat alone before I hold you in contempt of court. Karen stumbled out of the courtroom in complete defeat, $3,000 poorer and facing the humiliation of apologizing to a house cat. Justice had never tasted so sweet. What happened next proved that in the age of social media, justice travels at the speed of light. Within 30 minutes of the show airing, clips of Judge Judy's epic takedown were exploding across every platform on the internet. The moment Judge Judy asked, "Are you completely out of your mind?" became an instant meme, with millions of people using it to respond to ridiculous situations everywhere. TikTok users created remixes of her most savage lines, setting them to dramatic music that made the courtroom confrontation look like an action movie scene. Twitter erupted with hashtags that dominated trending topics worldwide. Does your cat Spygate reach #1 globally? Followed by Dr. Judge Judy Justice and Dunjiker Whiskers Innocent. The cat apology requirement had people crying with laughter, with thousands sharing jokes about Karen having to explain surveillance tactics to a house cat. Late-night talk show hosts spent entire monologues breaking down the case, with Jimmy Fallon doing a dramatic reading of Karen's conspiracy map that had audiences rolling in the aisles. Facebook groups dedicated to the case sprouted overnight, with over 500,000 members sharing their own stories of entitled neighbors and celebrating Judge Judy's brutal honesty. Instagram was flooded with memes featuring Whiskers as everything from a secret agent to a master spy, complete with tiny sunglasses and fake CIA badges. The orange tabby cat had become an international celebrity without even knowing it. Back on Maple Street, the aftermath was equally dramatic. Mrs. Chen returned home to find her mailbox overflowing with supportive letters from strangers around the world, many including donations for cat treats and toys for Whiskers. The elderly woman, overwhelmed by the kindness, spent days reading messages from people thanking her for handling the situation with such grace and dignity. Whiskers, blissfully unaware of his internet fame, continued his daily routine of napping in his favorite sunny spot by the fence. Karen, meanwhile, had become the most mocked person on the internet. Her name became synonymous with entitled behavior and ridiculous complaints. Real estate agents reported that her house went on the market within a week, and neighbors threw a block party to celebrate her departure. The handwritten apology letters she was forced to write became collector's items, with copies circulating online and being turned into merchandise. Judge Judy's savage takedown became required viewing in law schools as an example of how to deal with frivolous lawsuits. Legal experts praised her ability to cut through nonsense and deliver real justice with both humor and authority. The case was studied, quoted, and celebrated as a perfect example of common sense triumphing over entitled delusion. Most importantly, the story gave hope to millions of people dealing with their own difficult neighbors and entitled individuals. It proved that sometimes, just sometimes, justice isn't just served cold. It's served with the perfect combination of fury, wisdom, and devastating wit that only Judge Judy can deliver. Now, incredible viewers, if this story of ultimate justice restored your faith in common sense and left you cheering for truth over entitlement, don't just watch and walk away, take action. Smash that like button so hard your phone cracks. Subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell because we have dozens more shocking Judge Judy moments that will blow your mind. Comment below and tell us which part of Karen's epic destruction was your absolute favorite. And join our membership today for exclusive behind-the-scenes content and early access to the most jaw-dropping courtroom moments that prove justice and common sense are still alive and kicking. Let's celebrate truth, justice, and the American way together.